Ready to go. Go.
Hey, Peter, how are you?
Hey, Jason, good to see you, buddy.
Nice to see you.
And we're here today with our Beyond Performance event coming up. And I personally wanted to talk about the fact that, we've never really sat down and analyzed together for Facebook Live exactly what our program is going to include. So I thought it'd be a good idea. I would like to start from my perspective at my end. As we talked about the day of the event at La Costa, I'm kind of the body awareness guy. And in body awareness, as you've been in my office and you see what happens, people come in and I call it lost in space. They have no concept of where their body parts are in space because they have a default pattern. That default pattern is what you usually use, right? So one hip might be higher than the other, one shoulder might be lower than the other. And one of the things that I've come to realize over the years in clinical terms is that nobody's symmetrical. And we make the mistake of trying to think that we need to make bodies symmetrical. So your heart's on the left, your right lung's larger, your left eye might be larger, your left foot might be larger than your right. So your body is basically asymmetrical. Now, what you want to strive for, though, is some type of balance. And so in the world of biomechanics over the last 10 years, there's been a big push towards looking at functional movement and functional movement screens and selective functional movement assessments, that kind of thing. And that's had a huge impact on how you direct care for a patient, how you decide whether or not you're doing manual care versus exercises, for example. So when I look at an assessment, I don't overlook the static postural pattern because, like I said, that's a default. That's what your brain has got set. And so there's a lot to be told from that. Just like if you were to ignore what the MRI shows. If that MRI shows me that you have a big disc bulge on one side, and then I forget about that and I have you do all these movements and say, oh, well, this is your problem, I'm not paying attention to something that could be very critical with the why. Got to ask the why question, right?
So what you're getting at, Peter, is we're going to have people that are going to show up and they're going to participate in this Beyond Performance platform that we're creating. And one of the elements is to ensure that we get them in balance, because we know that that's critical, because the things that Tom's going to do as far as functional strength and movement to get their body moving efficiently, there's going to have to be an assessment piece to that first. So if we rewind a little, would you say that what we're going to do is we're going to have everybody participate in a star profile? So then we're going to get a little history. We're going to have like a screen of a snapshot of where they are in time, both with the mental as well as maybe skill acquisition or history as far as body goes. Is there chronic pain, whatever it is. So we're gonna have that snapshot. They're gonna show up. We're gonna create a personally adaptive program for each individual that's gonna then allow them to go from having this set of conditions that they've had for a while to then having a new belief system. Like we just got off the phone with one of our clients. One of my clients that I referred to you, and maybe this person's had this condition for a long time, and because of that reason, they're thinking, oh, well, then my outcome is X, and they start to have these negative thought processes about not being able to play golf as much as they used to, and then there's kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy. They get up in their footsore, and then they don't want to play, and then they don't practice, and then because they're not practicing, their game isn't as good as it used to, and it's kind of this snowball effect. What we're saying is we want to get people that are very interested. We're going to start with golf, but get very interested in getting better at golf, and we're going to have, for the first time ever, a group that combines the clinical with the practical.
Absolutely.
So
you hit the nail on the head there, especially when you get Tom's components, which have been universally proven to take an athlete to another level. You and I have seen Tom in action, and we can show like Hall of Fame football players that are just everyday type of athletes, so to speak, versus the guys that are the 6'5", physically gifted guys that tend to want to play street ball. But under Tom's guidance, he can take that really competitive athletic guy and turn him into a superstar by getting him a process. And that's what really embellishes what you do when you get them to that next level with their mental focus, their ability to recognize their anxiety levels, etc.
Absolutely.
So this is what's exciting about the whole program, is putting the pieces together, not having a cookie cutter approach, me with the body or Tom with the neuroemotional or you with the psychological and the performance aspects.
And Deepak with the mind and the wellness and the connection with the body and awareness.
Well, when we start talking about the possibilities of introducing those concepts to the average player, the young developing player, for example, when do these fear-based reactions start? At a very early age. And we know now, meditation, if you look at what happens when anybody has an established meditative practice, the brain functional MRIs and the brain scans show that the amygdala, the fear center, will start to shrink. So it's like anything else. When you exercise it properly, you get a reaction. When you exercise the mind in a quiet zone, obviously things that get out of control in our environment, which is overstimulation, right? And the fear reaction, that amygdala grows. The hippocampus on a taxi driver in New York and London has been shown to grow because they have to focus on memory, right? Yeah. So the mind-body connection and the ability to customize what's going on with the body, not just have a cookie-cutter approach to either modalities of chiro, PT, acupuncture, manual therapy. We want to try to teach people, not treatment as much as how do you take care of yourself? How do you get on the course, fix your own problems, and learn how to be at peace with what you have physically and maximize that potential.
So if we're going to steal one of the many Thomisms, we're going to teach them how they learn. So learn to learn, learn, and then learn to relearn. And that's really the goal. So we want to have people participate and take these players, and the first thing is create this environment where they learn how they learn best. And then we're going to have some learning, as far as best practices. And then when they leave, that's going to continue. So that's the relearn part.
And the last part would be learning how to compete too, right?
Sure.
And the maintenance. And that's one of the things with the young developing players that we're working with right now. It's like real estate. It's recovery. We've talked about it at length now, that the fitness for golf really has to do with that. When you have an athlete that has the ability to get to a certain level, the last thing you want to do is jeopardize their talents and their abilities to do that by overtaxing them with the wrong type of exercises. Since the Tiger generation, we've seen what happens when you do too much of what we think is a good thing to build power and endurance and everything else, but we sacrifice and expose them to injuries.
So what Tom would say is they end up recruiting strength out of sequence. And when they recruit strength, especially ground force, golf swing, you're making a weight shift using ground force. If you're recruiting strength out of sequence, it's just a matter of time before it shows up. It cascades into an injury. And we've seen a lot of wrist injuries lately, elbow injuries, lower back injuries, shoulder injuries. All these injuries are recruitment of strength out of sequence. And one of the things I know that, by you doing these screens, right, in combination with Tom's, neurophysiological teaching the body how it works better together, then hopefully when the athlete leaves, then they've got a war chest of tools. They know exactly what they need to do to stay on path and to hopefully remain injury-free. Now, I don't know as much about nutrition as you and James do, but maybe talk a little about what James is going to do in this program for the nutrition aspect.
Well, you hit the nail on the head there too. Like doctor means teacher, and we have to teach our players how to get themselves in a physical flow from my direction, in a neuroemotional flow from Tom's direction, and in a performance flow from your direction. And so, again, we talk about real estate and location, and I talk about fitness and recovery, but nutrition. If you don't have the right nutrition, you can't heal. If you don't have the right sleep habits, you can't heal. And it comes down to simple things like not chewing your food. You can have the best diet in the world, and if you're not chewing your food, you don't digest properly. So keep it simple. Don't go overboard. We have very specific attitudes about what types of food to utilize for hydration, and our players are all going to be given those concepts and driven home. But the old standards of even the carbohydrate and fat approach to fats is changing drastically. When you talk about brain health, we know that you have to have a certain amount of the good fats. One of the things that came out recently, I was telling you and Tom last week, was about stevia. Stevia is a sugar substitute.
It's amazing.
As a sugar substitute, one of my patients last week said, "Oh, I don't use any of those artificial sweeteners." I said, "No, hang on. It's not an artificial sweetener. It's actually a natural herb. And if it's not processed, then it's been shown in double-blind studies to help reverse the effects of metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome being obesity, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and high lipids. That pattern is showing up so aggressively in our present population. Hispanic population is known to be pushing like 43% right now of the metabolic syndrome. So the stevia is actually a miraculous way to approach that naturally, and if you know how good it is for you, you can get used to the sweet.
So the bottom line is it's going to be this inclusive 7-pillar approach, but every pillar is going to be personally adaptive to the individual.
And give that individual the power to understand why they have the program, why they're working towards that target. You got to have that target. You got to keep them motivated to move towards that target. It can't be a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Where are my hands today? Where are my feet tomorrow? What do I do to get rid of my back pain? We have to get them to understand physical flow, mental, neuroemotional flow, and the performance.
Right, and the great thing is we're going to use technology, and so I don't know if you recognize this. Peter obviously does,
yeah.
But this is Focus Band. This is the technology that we created, and you can see the 3 sensors here. So what we do is we use this technology to measure exactly what's going on in the participant's brain. So in doing that, we'll create a blueprint, and this is Peter keeps referring to performance flow. So we'll create this blueprint which will be personally adaptive to the person, to what they mentally need to do to get the most out of their game. So it's all-inclusive. Can you customize? Can you think of anything that we're leaving out of this program? What people would expect to get out of this?
I think they're going to learn how to own what they need to play at a high level, not just we're talking golf to begin with, but we're talking all sports and how this translates into performance in the boardroom.
Just everyday life.
On stage, yeah.
Right. So what I think is, if we're going to sum this all up, is we're going to use technology, but we're also going to use, your clinical background, Deepak's clinical background, James's clinical background, Tom's clinical background.
And then 150, 60 years of clinical. That's not bad.
Right, and then we're gonna use the practical side of it and how we can combine it for the individual. And I think the important thing to understand is a team like this is usually only available to the elite of the elite.
And even then, what happens? And I've been in that world. Even then, what happens is the individual faculties don't necessarily talk to each other.
Right, 100%.
I mean, Tom and yourself have gotten very close with the aspects of what you're trying to do, and Tom and I have worked together for years, so you check the ego at the door. Jim
Absolutely.
Machino and I have known each other for 40 years.
That's amazing.
This is a matter of trying to get information, educate the individual, educate the player, and get them to another level. We might not have all the answers, but hopefully we're going to open the doors where you can get the answer.
Absolutely right.
We'll show the date and the location.
So it's the very next date is going to be November 10th at La Costa Resort and Spa right here in San Diego.
Website.
And the website is beyondperformancesports.com. So if you're looking for more information, visit us at beyondperformancesports.com, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Peter.